I can't believe you would do this to our family!
My name is Lindsay Foster, and for most of my 35 years, I've been fighting for something that was never handed to me: respect. I'm an interior designer based in San Antonio, Texas, and every piece of furniture, every polished tile, every glowing light in my apartment is a reflection of the years I spent building a life from the ground up. I call this place my sanctuary, my masterpiece, my proof that I didn't need anyone's permission to succeed. But one quiet Sunday afternoon, in this very living room I designed with my own hands, my parents decided to take it all away. That day, sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting warm patterns across my cream-colored sofa. The air smelled faintly of jasmine candles. I'd lit them early, trying to make my home feel peaceful before they arrived. I thought we were meeting to reconnect, maybe share dinner like a family again after years of drifting apart. But the moment they stepped through my door, something was off. My father, Thomas Foster, stood stiff near the entrance, clutching a folder like it was a court document. My mother, Carol, smiled nervously, carrying a casserole dish that steamed through its foil lid. And then came my younger sister, Melanie, walking in with her usual glow of confidence and her 2 kids trailing behind like tiny shadows. Ethan and Mia immediately began exploring, touching everything, their laughter echoing against my marble countertops. I welcomed them politely, offering coffee, pretending I didn't feel the tension tightening in my chest. For a few minutes, we talked about nothing: the kids' school, the weather, traffic on I-10. But then my father cleared his throat. The sound sliced through the air like a warning bell. "Lindsay," he began, "we've been thinking a lot about family lately. About what's fair." His words hung in the air, strange and heavy. My mother nodded, eyes darting to my sister. "Melanie's been struggling since Craig left," she said softly. "It's been hard on her. On the kids." I nodded politely, waiting for the point. Then came the blow, clean, sharp, irreversible. "We've decided," my father continued, "that your sister and her children need this apartment more than you do." For a moment, the room fell silent. I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock and the hum of the city outside. I blinked, thinking I'd misheard him. "What?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't flinch. "You're doing well, Lindsay. You can always find another place. But your sister, she needs stability. A home. You can help her by giving her this one." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd that it felt unreal. My sister sipped her coffee, smiling faintly, eyes glancing around the apartment like she was already moving in. "It's a great place for the kids," she added lightly. "Close to good schools. Lots of space." My hands trembled as I set my mug down. My voice, when it came out, was tight and low. "This is my home. I bought it. I designed every inch of it. Why would you think I'd just give it away?" My father's eyes hardened. "Because family means sacrifice." Those words, the same ones I'd heard all my life, hit me like a punch. Family means sacrifice. Translation: Lindsay gives, Melanie takes. My mother reached for my hand, her tone pleading. "Honey, you've always been strong. You'll be fine. But your sister, she's what? I snapped. Irresponsible? Entitled? You think rewarding her mistakes will fix anything? The room went cold. The kids, sensing the tension, grew restless. Ethan picked up a marker from my design desk, and before I could stop him, bright red lines streaked across my pristine white wall, my gallery wall, the one I'd spent hours perfecting. Mia giggled and joined in, turning my minimalist living room into a child's coloring book. I froze, my throat tight. Melanie didn't even look up. Kids will be kids, she said casually, scrolling through her phone. And my parents, they said nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know. In their eyes, my hard work meant nothing compared to my sister's chaos. My success was an inconvenience, a reminder of what their golden child had failed to become. When they finally left, the apartment felt hollow. I stood there, staring at the red streaks on my wall. It wasn't just paint. It was the symbol of every time they'd taken something from me, my grandmother's attention, my childhood fairness, my peace. That night, I tried to clean the wall. The red wouldn't fade. I scrubbed until my hands ached, tears mixing with sweat, but it was still there, a scar that refused to disappear. And as I sat on the floor, exhausted and shaking, one thought burned through the noise. They think they can take my home, but they've forgotten who I am. I wasn't the quiet little girl anymore, who watched her sister get everything. I wasn't the daughter who waited for approval that never came. I was the woman who built this life from ashes. And I wasn't going to lose it. Not this time. Because what they didn't know, what they could never imagine, was that I'd already discovered something about my sister's plans. Something that would turn this family favor into a reckoning. What I did next, they never expected. Before that day in my apartment, before the betrayal that stripped the air from my lungs, there was another kind of silence that shaped me. The quiet kind. The kind that seeps into your bones when you realize the people who should protect you have already chosen their favorite. I grew up in San Antonio, in a modest neighborhood where the cicadas sang through summer evenings, and the smell of fried tortillas drifted from every porch. My parents, Thomas and Carol Foster, were young, ambitious, always chasing something just out of reach. They worked long hours in Austin, nearly an hour's drive away, leaving me in the care of my grandmother, Evelyn Foster, a woman with silver hair, soft hands, and a voice that could calm storms. Grandma's house had a creaky porch swing that groaned in rhythm with the Texas wind. That swing was my first safe place. I'd sit there with a glass of sweet tea, listening to her stories about the old days, how our family used to value hard work and honor above everything. In this world, baby, she'd tell me, you've got to build your worth with your own two hands. No one else will hand it to you. For years, it was just me and her. My parents visited on weekends, full of smiles and promises. Then, when I was 5, everything changed. My sister Melanie was born. She was tiny, pink, and perfect, and suddenly, the center of the universe. My parents moved back to San Antonio to keep the family together, but really, it felt like they'd moved back for her. I adored her at first. I'd hold her little hands, help her take her first steps, braid her hair when we were older. But even as a child, I felt the imbalance growing like a shadow. Melanie got new dolls, shiny dresses, a canopy bed with lace curtains. I got hand-me-downs and a pat on the shoulder. You're such a good big sister. It didn't bother me, not at first. I thought that's what being the older one meant. But when Grandma died suddenly when I was 12, the world went dark. She'd been my compass, and without her, I drifted. My parents were too busy to notice my grief. They were busy planning Melanie's 8th birthday party, a backyard carnival with balloons, a rented bounce house, and a towering pink cake. I got a sympathy card that year, and a used book about how to cope with loss. That was the first time I realized love in our family wasn't equal, it was transactional. I threw myself into school after that. My notebooks were filled not with doodles or diary entries, but floor plans and color palettes. I'd sketch imaginary homes where every room felt balanced, where every child mattered. Maybe, deep down, I was trying to build the world I didn't have. Meanwhile, Melanie's world bloomed. She got tutors, piano lessons, ballet recitals. My parents bragged about her at every dinner. Our little star, they'd call her. I'd sit there with a quiet smile, pretending it didn't sting. When she turned 16, they surprised her with a brand new convertible, cherry red and gleaming in the driveway. I remember the sunlight bouncing off the metal, the smell of new leather, and my father's proud grin as he handed her the keys. I was still riding a bike to my part-time job at a diner. When I asked, just once, why I hadn't gotten the same, my father's tone was sharp but final. You're independent. You'll figure things out. She needs it more. That sentence became a refrain in my life. She needs it more. When she wanted to study abroad, they paid for it. When I applied for college, I got a hug and a reminder that loans build character. But I didn't quit. I worked nights at that same diner, pouring coffee for strangers, saving every dollar I could. Sometimes I'd bike home past the glowing houses of wealthier families, staring through their windows at dining tables surrounded by laughter. I'd imagine sitting at one of those tables, where love didn't feel like a competition. Every rejection, every oversight, became fuel. When I got accepted into a design school in Dallas, I didn't tell my parents right away. Part of me wanted to see if they'd even ask. They didn't. My mother mentioned how proud she was of Melanie's academic drive. The same semester I left home on a bus with 2 suitcases and a heart full of determination. Those years in Dallas were brutal. I worked double shifts, often coming home past midnight, my hands blistered from moving furniture at my part-time job in a staging company. My diet was mostly instant noodles and cheap coffee, but I was happy, truly happy, because for the first time, every success, every sketch, every step forward was mine. I remember calling my parents when I landed my first internship. My heart was pounding, expecting maybe, just maybe, they'd say, "We're proud of you." Instead, my mother said, "That's nice, dear, but your sister just got the lead role in her college play." And just like that, I was invisible again. Years later, I realized something important. When people decide you're the strong one, they stop offering you love. they start expecting you to survive everything alone. That belief shaped everything that came next. It made me tougher, sharper, hungrier, but it also carved out a loneliness I carried like a scar. By the time I turned 30, I'd stopped waiting for recognition. My energy went into creation. I built my business one client at a time, transforming homes for people who wanted meaning in every corner. I understood space like emotion, how lighting could soothe grief, how color could heal. When I finally had enough saved to buy that rundown apartment in San Antonio's Pearl District, I knew it was more than real estate. It was a monument to survival. I renovated it myself, sanded floors, repainted walls, chose every fixture by hand. My blood and sweat are in the foundation of that place. And every time I walked through it, I felt Grandma Evelyn there with me, her voice whispering through the walls. Build your worth with your own 2 hands. So when my parents sat in that same living room years later and told me to give it all away, to hand my life's work to the same sister who'd been given everything since birth, I didn't just feel anger. I felt history repeating itself. And I knew, deep down, that if I didn't stop it now, I'd lose more than a home. I'd lose myself. By the time I turned 18, the world had already taught me one cruel but useful truth. No one was coming to save me. The day I packed my bags for Dallas, my father gave me a firm handshake instead of a hug, and my mother tucked a $20 bill into my palm for emergencies. That was their version of support. I boarded that Greyhound bus alone, my backpack full of art supplies, my chest full of hope, and a small sketchbook that would one day become my blueprint for independence. The city of Dallas was loud, unforgiving, and exhilarating. I rented a cramped room in a shared apartment above a laundromat, the kind where the walls shook every time someone started the spin cycle downstairs. The smell of detergent mixed with the constant hum of dryers became the soundtrack of my early years. By day, I was a design student, scribbling floor plans between lectures. By night, I worked double shifts at a cafe, wiping tables and sketching concepts for interiors on napkins during my breaks. I learned to see beauty in exhaustion. Some nights, after closing the cafe, I'd sit on the curb outside, looking up at the windows of high-rise buildings where real designers worked. I'd imagine myself there, not as the forgotten daughter, but as someone whose name meant something. That dream kept me going through every rejection, every overdue bill, every phone call home that ended in disappointment. My parents rarely called, and when they did, it was to talk about Melanie. She just got cast in another play, my mother would say. We're helping her buy a car so she can drive to rehearsals. Their voices were always lighter when they talked about her, as if she was sunlight and I was shadow. It hurt, of course, but pain became familiar, even useful. It sharpened my focus. While Melanie lived on applause and parental praise, I lived on resilience. By my junior year, I landed an internship with a renowned design firm in San Antonio, a rare chance to return home on my own terms. The first day I stepped into that sleek, glass-walled office, I felt something shift inside me. The smell of fresh paint, the hum of architects discussing projects, the sharp lines of the furniture. Everything spoke my language. I poured myself into that job, staying late, learning every trick, absorbing every detail like oxygen. I wanted to prove that I belonged, not just to my bosses, but to the ghosts of my childhood. When my internship ended, I was offered a permanent position. I celebrated alone that night with a cheap bottle of champagne and a heart bursting with pride. I thought about calling my parents to share the news, but I could already hear the likely response. "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Melanie's new boutique is opening soon?" So I didn't call. I just kept working. Years passed. I climbed the ranks from junior designer to lead consultant. I took freelance projects on weekends, designing small apartments for clients who reminded me of my younger self, hungry, unseen, trying to build something from scraps. Each paycheck went into savings, and every dollar felt like another brick in my wall of independence. And then, one afternoon, I found it, the place. A run-down apartment in the Pearl District, once a forgotten corner of San Antonio that had since transformed into the city's artistic heart. The building was old, scarred, and beautiful, a mix of exposed brick and cracked beams, with sunlight filtering through tall, dusty windows. Most people saw decay. I saw potential. The real estate agent warned me, "This place needs work." I smiled. So do most things worth keeping. I signed the papers and never looked back. That apartment became my life's canvas. I stripped the old paint myself, spent nights sanding the floors until my fingers bled, and built custom cabinetry piece by piece. I remember standing barefoot in the middle of the unfinished living room one night, paintbrush in hand, staring at the soft glow of the city lights outside. It was more than renovation. It was redemption. Every inch of that apartment told my story, the story of someone who had to fight for every good thing she had. By the time I finished, it wasn't just a place to live, it was a statement. My walls whispered, "You made this. You survived." I wanted my parents to see it, to walk through the door and finally say, "We're proud of you." But they never came. Oh, they heard about it through relatives. Lindsay bought a place in the Pearl District. Did you see the pictures? But they never asked to visit. When my mother finally did call, it wasn't to congratulate me. It was to ask if I could help pay for Melanie's business idea. I didn't answer right away. Later, I learned Melanie's boutique, a line of overpriced athleisure wear, was failing. She'd overinvested, ignored her accountant, and lost tens of thousands. My parents swooped in to cover the damage, draining their savings. They called it helping family. Family. The same word that had always meant one-sided sacrifice. Meanwhile, my work flourished. My designs were featured in a local magazine. I was hired to redesign a boutique hotel lobby downtown. Clients started requesting me by name. Yet no matter how much success I earned, the emptiness lingered, a small voice whispering that I'd never be enough in their eyes. When I saw Melanie again, years later, at a family dinner, she was radiant as ever, dressed head to toe in luxury brands she couldn't afford, talking about manifesting abundance. She flashed me a perfect smile, that same smile from our childhood, the one that melted our parents' resolve. "You're so lucky," she said, sipping her wine. No kids, no husband, all that free time to design pretty spaces. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. Luck had nothing to do with it. Luck didn't pay off student loans. Luck didn't spend sleepless nights working overtime, while your sister posted vacation photos funded by your parents. Luck didn't bleed for the life you built. But I said nothing. I smiled, raised my glass, and silently promised myself that no one, not her, not my parents, not anyone, would ever take from me again. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Until that day, the day they called. "Lindsay, we need to talk." "It's important," my mother said on the phone. Her tone was calm but firm. "Let's meet at your apartment." It's time we discussed family matters. I didn't know it yet, but that meeting would unravel everything. Every boundary I'd built, every quiet victory I'd earned. And when they arrived at my door weeks later, carrying casseroles and secrets, I had no idea that the home I'd fought so hard for was about to become the battlefield where generations of unspoken resentment would finally explode. The day they arrived felt strangely ceremonial, like a Sunday that had forgotten its peace. The sky over San Antonio was pale gray, the kind that makes the air feel heavy with things unsaid. I'd spent the morning cleaning the apartment, wiping down every counter, straightening every book on the shelf, lighting the same jasmine candles Grandma Evelyn used to love. It wasn't just about tidiness. It was about control. When life spins out of balance, you cling to the small things you can still make perfect. At precisely 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I forced a smile and opened the door. My parents stepped in. My mother, Carol, wore her favorite pearl earrings, a sign she wanted to look respectable. My father's face was set in that familiar, unreadable expression that used to precede every difficult conversation. And then came Melanie, effortless as ever, in a cream sundress and expensive perfume, holding Ethan's hand while Mia clung to her hip. The children's laughter echoed against my hardwood floors, bouncing through the rooms I'd worked years to perfect. Ethan ran to the corner, pointing at the chandelier I'd imported from Italy. "Mommy, it's like the castle lights," he squealed. I smiled tightly. "Glad you like it." We sat down in the living room, the same one that had once been my quiet refuge after long work days. Now, it felt like a stage. The air buzzed with something electric, uneasy. My father cleared his throat, the way he always did before delivering a decree. "Lindsay," he began, folding his hands. "We called this meeting because, well, there's something we need to talk about as a family." That word again. Family. I looked from him to my mother. She avoided my eyes, staring at the floor. Melanie adjusted her dress, already rehearsing her role, the wounded victim, the struggling single mom. I could feel my pulse in my temples. "What is this about?" I asked quietly. My father exchanged a glance with my mother, who nodded. He exhaled slowly. "Your sister has had a difficult year. You know about the divorce, the debts, the situation with the boutique?" "I do," I said. "She's trying her best," my mother added, her voice trembling. "But raising 2 children alone, in that tiny apartment, It's been hard. I waited, already knowing where this was going, but hoping, foolishly, that I was wrong. Then my father said it. The sentence that would echo in my head for weeks afterward. We've decided that Melanie and the kids should move in here. Permanently. The words hit me like a slap. For a second, the world went silent. No cars outside, no birds, just the dull roar of my heartbeat in my ears. You're giving her my apartment? I said finally, my voice low and calm, like it belonged to someone else. It's for the grandchildren, my mother said quickly. They deserve better than that rental she's in. You're doing well, Lindsay. You can start fresh somewhere else. Somewhere else. The phrase felt like a curse. I looked around my living room, the one I'd rebuilt with my own 2 hands, the walls I'd painted, the shelves I'd designed, the light I'd chosen because it reminded me of hope, and realized they saw none of it. To them, it wasn't mine. It was just property. Melanie leaned back on the couch, crossing her legs casually. It's a great place for the kids, she said, as if we were discussing real estate listings. Good schools nearby, lots of space. We'd really make it feel like home. That was it. We'd make it feel like home. The we, not me. I could feel the tremor starting in my hands. This is my home, I said slowly. I worked for it. Every dollar, every late night, every scar on these hands came from earning this place. You can't just... Family means helping each other, my father interrupted sharply. The same phrase again. It burned this time. Family means helping each other, but it never meant them helping me. It always meant me giving something up. Maybe, I said quietly, but helping doesn't mean handing over my life's work. My father's jaw tightened. My mother sighed. Melanie simply smiled. That smug, practiced smile I'd seen since childhood, the one that always said, I win again. Ethan tugged on her sleeve. Mommy, can we stay here tonight? My chest tightened. She looked at me, still smiling. See? They love it already. That's when it happened. Mia, the younger one, found a box of colored markers on my design table. Before I could stop her, she started drawing bright red loops on the cream-colored wall, my wall, the one I'd sanded and painted myself last spring. Ethan joined in, giggling, adding streaks of blue and green. My breath caught in my throat. Hey, I said, moving forward. Please don't, but Melanie didn't even look up from her phone. They're just playing. Relax, Lindsay. Relax. I knelt beside the wall, watching the color soak into the paint, permanent as betrayal. My parents watched too, silently, almost detached. No one told the children to stop. No one apologized. When I turned back to them, something inside me had cracked. You've spent your whole lives teaching me that I'm strong, I said quietly, that I can take care of myself. And every time she fails, you rush to rescue her. But you're not saving her. You're teaching her that the world will always bend for her. My mother looked up, eyes glassy. She's family, Lindsay. So am I said. Or did you forget? The silence that followed was deafening. They left soon after, the casserole untouched, the air still thick with resentment. When the door clicked shut, I turned to face the wall again. The red and blue lines glared at me under the soft lamplight, wild, messy, irreversible. I spent hours that evening trying to scrub them off, my fingers raw, tears streaking down my face. But no matter how hard I tried, the marks only smeared, bleeding deeper into the paint. That night, sitting on the floor with a rag in my hand, I realized something. It wasn't just about paint. It was about history. Every stroke, every mark, every silent injustice layered on top of the last, until my identity, my worth, had become something they thought they could repaint. But this time, I wasn't going to let them. I looked around the room, my sanctuary turned battlefield, and whispered into the quiet, "You've taken enough." What I didn't know yet was that the real war hadn't even started. Because my sister's plan, the one she'd kept hidden behind her smiles and sob stories, was far darker than I ever imagined. And I was about to uncover it. For days after that so-called family meeting, I walked through my apartment like a ghost. The walls still bore the faint red stains of Ethan's markers, no matter how hard I scrubbed. I'd pass by them every morning, each line a scar that refused to fade, a reminder that the people I loved most had no respect for what I'd built. But the hardest part wasn't the damage on the walls. It was the silence that followed. No apology. No follow-up call. Just the thick, familiar emptiness of being forgotten again. Except this time, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the obedient daughter anymore. I wasn't the strong one who would take it quietly. My intuition told me there was more to this than parental guilt or misplaced sympathy. My sister wasn't just desperate, she was calculating. And soon, I'd have proof. It started with small things. 2 days after the meeting, I came home from work to find a note taped to my door in Melanie's handwriting. Stopped by with the kids. You weren't home. Maybe next time. The smiley face at the end felt like a taunt. Then it happened again. And again. 3 visits in 1 week, each time while I was gone. My stomach twisted every time I saw a new note, my mind flashing with images of her strolling through my space, her children running wild, her perfume clinging to my furniture. I called her. "Melanie, stop showing up uninvited." She laughed, actually laughed. "It's no big deal, Lindsay. We're family." I just wanted the kids to feel comfortable here. Comfortable. As if this was already their home. I hung up without replying, my pulse pounding. That night, I called my parents to tell them about it. My mother sighed and said, "She's just trying to feel close to you. Don't be so cold." Cold. That word again. The punishment for every boundary I ever drew. But the next week, things got worse. One Friday afternoon, I came home early from a client meeting and froze at the sound of laughter inside my apartment. My key turned in the lock, and when I pushed open the door, there they were. Melanie, Ethan, Mia, in my kitchen, eating cereal, watching TV. She looked up at me, utterly unbothered. "Oh, hey. I used the spare key from Mom and Dad's place. You don't mind, right?" I did. My voice shook as I said it. "Get out." Her eyes narrowed. "You're overreacting. Get out." Something in my tone must have finally landed, because she gathered the kids and left, but not before tossing over her shoulder. God, you've always been so territorial. No wonder you live alone. That night, I changed the locks. It should have ended there. But instead, it's where everything began to unravel. The following week, while cleaning the coffee table, I noticed something that didn't belong. A sleek white business card with a gold logo embossed across it. Donna Clark, Realtor, Britucket Pearl District Properties. I stared at it for a full minute, my stomach dropping. I'd never contacted a realtor. And the only other person who'd been here recently was her. I picked up my phone, called the number, and when a cheerful voice answered, I said, "Hi, this is Lindsay Foster. I found your card in my home, and I just wanted to ask if you've recently been in contact with my sister, Melanie Foster." There was a pause. Then Donna's tone softened. "Oh, yes, actually." She reached out last week to ask about appraising a Pearl District apartment. Said it was a family decision. My heart sank. Appraising? Yes, Donna said. She said she was handling some paperwork and might be preparing to list it for sale. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. My sister, my own sister, had been planning to sell my apartment. When I finally found my voice, I thanked Donna, hung up, and sat in silence for a long time. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from fury. It wasn't just entitlement anymore. This was deception, deliberate, practiced, rehearsed. She'd been manipulating our parents, playing the same helpless daughter she always had, while planning to liquidate my home behind my back. But I needed proof, real, undeniable proof that could protect me. That night, I called Aunt Martha Hughes, my mother's older sister. If my family had a truth teller, it was her. She'd always seen through Melanie's charm, even when my parents couldn't. We met the next morning at a quiet cafe near the Pearl District. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon filled the air, but I could barely taste anything. When I told her about the meeting, the realtor, and the notes on my door, her expression hardened. "That sounds like your sister," Martha said, stirring her coffee. She's always been clever with other people's generosity. Then she hesitated. "Lindsay, there's something you don't know." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "When your grandmother died, she left a small inheritance, about $20,000. Your parents were supposed to split it between you and Melanie. But your mother told me Melanie convinced them to give her your half. She said you didn't need it, that you were the responsible one. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. I could see Grandma's face in my memory, her soft smile, her words about building my worth with my own two hands. I'd thought she'd left me nothing but wisdom, but even that had been stolen. I clenched my jaw. She used it, didn't she? Martha nodded. Blew it on a car and a trip to Vegas. Came back broke within a month. It was like hearing the same story on repeat. My sister's greed, my parents' blindness, my role as the silent casualty. But this time, I wouldn't stay silent. I left the cafe with a plan already forming. The first person I called was Kevin Ross, a colleague from my firm who specialized in property law, smart, meticulous, and loyal. I told him everything. He listened quietly before saying, "If she tried to appraise your apartment under your name, there'll be a digital trail. I can check for inquiries in county records or recent appraisal requests." Within 2 days, Kevin had proof. Melanie had submitted a preliminary inquiry to a real estate appraiser under the pretext of being co-owner of the property. Think. She'd forged documents claiming shared family equity. I stared at the report in disbelief. My sister had gone from careless to criminal. Kevin looked at me across the table. "She's in deep debt, Lindsay. $50,000, maybe more. Failed boutique, unpaid credit cards, personal loans. She's desperate. Desperate people do desperate things." But yeah, for years, I'd let my family walk over me in the name of love. But that love had been weaponized, twisted into a leash. This wasn't just about protecting an apartment anymore. It was about reclaiming every piece of myself they'd tried to give away. I looked out the window, the reflection of the city lights flickering across the glass, and said the words I'd never dared to say before. Enough. It's time to end this. By the time I decided to confront them, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns fast, hot, loud, consuming, but what I felt that week was something quieter, colder, and far more dangerous. It was clarity. For the first time in my life, I could see the roles we'd all been playing: the savior, the victim, the invisible one. And I was done being invisible. Kevin helped me set everything in motion. We met in his office downtown, surrounded by architectural models and rolled-up blueprints. The city hummed outside, steady, indifferent. "You're sure about this?" he asked, tapping the legal folder that lay between us. I nodded. "I want my apartment protected permanently." He explained a plan that sounded like something out of a corporate playbook. Transfer the property into a family trust, with co-trustees, him and his legal associate, Virginia Lane, so that it couldn't be touched by anyone outside the agreement. "If she tries to move against you again," he said, "she'll be hitting a wall of lawyers instead of your front door." For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. "Do it." It took 2 days to finalize the paperwork. I signed my name over and over, each stroke a quiet declaration of freedom. When it was done, Kevin slid the final document toward me. "Congratulations," he said. "Your home's untouchable now." Untouchable. I liked that word. It felt like armor. But there was still one thing left: the truth. I couldn't carry it silently anymore. I needed them to hear it, to face what they'd done. So I called my parents. I invited them, and Melanie, to a quiet restaurant in the Pearl District. "I have something important to discuss," I said. My tone must have carried weight, because for once, they didn't argue. That night, I arrived early. The restaurant was softly lit, the kind of place where the air smells faintly of lemon and candle wax. I sat at a corner table, the legal folder beside my wine glass, rehearsing the words I'd waited my whole life to say. When they entered, my parents, cautious and polite, and Melanie, all charm and confidence, I felt my chest tighten. "Lindsay," my mother began, forcing a smile. "We're glad you called. Maybe we can all make peace tonight." "Maybe," I said quietly. "Sit down." They did. For a few moments, we exchanged pleasantries, talk of work, of the kids, of anything but the tension humming between us. Then I set my glass down and looked straight at Melanie. "I know what you've been doing," I said. Her smile faltered. "Excuse me?" "You contacted Donna Clark," I continued, my voice steady. "You asked for an appraisal on my apartment. You said it was for a family decision. You were planning to sell it." Color drained from her face. "That's a lie." I slid a document across the table, Kevin's report, printed and bound. "The records say otherwise." My parents exchanged confused looks. My father frowned. "Melanie, what's this about?" She stammered. I thought maybe, I didn't mean." I didn't let her finish. "You've been manipulating everyone for years," I said. "You used Grandma's inheritance. You lied about it. You took what was meant for both of us and burned it away on a trip to Vegas. You convinced Mom and Dad that I didn't need it because I was strong." My mother's eyes widened. "Is that true?" Melanie's voice rose, shrill now. "It was decades ago. I was a kid." "No," I said. "You were old enough to know better. And you're still doing it." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Even the waiter passing nearby seemed to sense it and veered away. My father's hands tightened on the tablecloth. "Is this true, Melanie?" She looked down, cheeks flushed, tears threatening. "I just wanted to fix things. The kids, they need stability. I thought if I sold it, I could pay off my debt and start over." I leaned forward. "By stealing from me?" Her voice broke. "You have everything. A career, a home, no one depending on you. Why can't you just help me for once?" I almost laughed, not out of cruelty, but disbelief. Help her? After decades of giving, sacrificing, disappearing so she could shine? "I did help you," I said softly. "Every time I stayed silent. Every time I pretended I wasn't hurt. Every time I let you win." My father started to speak, but I cut him off. "You always told me family means sacrifice, but you never said it only meant mine." Then, slowly, I pulled another folder from my bag and placed it on the table. "This," I said, tapping it, "is the trust agreement. My apartment is no longer in my name alone. It's protected. No one, not even family, can touch it now." Melanie's expression shifted from shock to fury. "You're so selfish," she spat. "What about my kids?" I met her gaze, unflinching. "Your kids deserve a mother who learns to stand on her own, not one who steals from her sister to survive." My mother whispered my name, tears slipping down her cheeks. My father sat stiff, silent, as if the weight of decades had finally landed. "I'm done," I said simply. "Done being your scapegoat. Done being your safety net. Done pretending we're a family when all you've done is take." Melanie pushed back her chair, trembling. "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly. "I already did, for 35 years. I stood, leaving the folder on the table. "Keep the papers. Read them if you want. Fais-moi. It's all real." As I walked out into the night, the city lights shimmered like molten gold on the river. My reflection followed me in the windows, tired, trembling, but lighter, freer. Behind me, I heard my father's voice rise, then break, demanding explanations. My mother crying softly. Melanie pleading. It didn't matter anymore. For the first time in my life, their noise didn't reach me. Tumla, the air outside was cool, the streets alive with laughter and music from nearby bars. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in, the scent of freedom. I'd spent so many years chasing their approval, begging for scraps of affection. But walking away from that restaurant, I realized something simple and profound. You don't need permission to choose peace. I didn't look back. It's been a year since that night. One full turn of the calendar, 12 quiet months since I walked out of that restaurant and left my old life and my old self behind. I thought cutting ties would bring chaos, but instead, it brought stillness. For the first time in my life, the silence in my home feels peaceful, not lonely. In the days after the confrontation, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, messages, missed calls, half-voiced apologies from my mother, angry voicemails from Melanie, even one from my father, who still tried to sound in control. I didn't answer any of them. Then, the calls stopped. That was when I realized that peace doesn't arrive with a bang. It comes quietly, like sunlight sneaking through curtains you forgot to open, like breathing deeply after years of holding your breath. Word reached me through Aunt Martha about what happened next. My parents finally saw the truth. When faced with the documents Kevin provided and the records of Melanie's debts, they couldn't deny what she'd done. They confronted her, and for the first time in her life, she couldn't charm her way out of it. They stopped paying her rent, cut off the credit card she used for emergencies, refused to clear her debts, and just like that, the empire of excuses she'd lived under crumbled. She took a retail job, full-time, managing a clothing store in a strip mall outside the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. I almost admired her for it, until she sent me a letter. I still have it in a drawer. She wrote that she was sorry I took things so personally, sorry life turned out unfair, sorry I couldn't understand her situation better. Every line was a deflection wrapped in apology. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted revenge, because I'd already found something better, closure. Meanwhile, my parents tried to repair what was left of the family, but too much had been said and too much had been unsaid for too long. They invited me to dinners, holidays, birthdays. I declined, gently at first, then firmly. I told them I needed time. Time, as it turns out, is exactly what I needed. My work thrived. I signed a major contract redesigning a boutique hotel lobby downtown, the same project I used to dream of as a student in that tiny Dallas apartment. I spent nights sketching ideas beneath soft lamplight, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city. Each design I drew felt like a step away from who I used to be, the overlooked daughter, the quiet achiever, and toward someone new, a woman who no longer needed to be chosen to know her worth. Kevin and I grew close during those long months of work and rebuilding. We started sharing dinners after late meetings, laughter that lasted longer than it should, conversations that went from legal advice to late-night dreams. He never asked for anything from me, only gave. For once, I didn't have to earn care. And my apartment, my once broken, violated space, is whole again. I repainted the walls, finally covering those faint red stains that used to mock me. I chose a soft off-white color called Renewal. It glows warmly when sunlight hits it. Sometimes, at night, I sit on my balcony overlooking the San Antonio skyline, the hum of the Pearl District below, and I think about everything that's happened. The betrayals, the inheritance I never received, the endless years of trying to be seen. And I realize something Grandma Evelyn used to say has finally made sense. Some lessons, child, are paid for in heartbreak. For years, I thought strength meant endurance, swallowing pain, forgiving endlessly, staying quiet to keep the peace. But I've learned that true strength is something quieter. It's choosing yourself when others call it selfish. It's saying no when the world has conditioned you to always say yes. There's a kind of love that heals and a kind that drains. And sometimes they wear the same face. Now, when people ask me about family, I smile and tell them this: blood may tie you, but it doesn't have to bind you. I've learned to build my family differently, through friends who cheer my wins, clients who trust my vision, people who add light instead of taking it away. Last month, I visited Grandma's old house, the one with the porch swing. The boards creaked under my weight, just like they used to. I sat there for a long while, the Texas wind warm against my face, the scent of earth and jasmine filling the air. I whispered, "I did it, Grandma. I built my worth with my own 2 hands." A breeze passed through the porch, brushing against my cheek like a ghostly touch. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was her. I don't know. What I do know is that I'm free. Free from needing approval. Free from carrying guilt that wasn't mine. Free from letting love become a weapon. My story isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation. About realizing that peace isn't given. It's earned. And sometimes you have to lose everything familiar to find yourself again. So if you're listening, and you've ever been made to feel small in the name of love, if you've ever been told that family means sacrifice, and it always meant yours, I want you to remember this. You have the right to protect your peace. You have the right to draw the line, even if that line is between you and the people who raised you. Because the moment you choose yourself, the world starts to look a lot more like home. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you strength, peace, and the kind of love that never asks you to disappear to deserve it. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe so we can share more stories like this one together.